Have you told your story? Maybe it's time you did. Welcome to Sobriety Snippets for Ambitious Women Over 40, where we elevate our mindset to trade hangovers for higher consciousness, one powerful snippet at a time. I'm Becca Jacobson, and this is Snippet Land. Welcome aboard. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found us because this is where you belong if you're 40-plus woman struggling with alcohol. This is your new home. This is where we do it. This is where women find other women like them and realize they're not alone. And that is my honor and privilege to connect you to other women like you. Even if it's just hearing me say, guess what, gals? There's other women like you. That alone is enough. Listen, today we're going to talk about telling our stories, why it's so important, and how you can be heard. We don't talk about this a whole lot, but the truth of the matter is we need to be heard. We need to tell our stories. We need to know that somebody knows we're here and that we're suffering and that we're struggling and what it looks like and what it feels like. And how do we do that anyway? Well, what I really want to talk about today in relation to that is the difference between coaching and counseling and how your story is tied into these, but more importantly, how your journey to sobriety is tied into these. My dears, one thing I know for sure, you need support one way or another. But then the question becomes, what kind of support? Let's have a look at some examples of people who get support in sobriety. We have the 90-year-old Alcoholics Anonymous. 1935 they began. 90 years they've been going, and they're still going strong. You know, you can go anywhere in the world and find an AA meeting, including online. There's something to be said for that, gals. Whether you go to AA or not, whether you believe in it, like it, don't, it's irrelevant. The point is, they've been around for 90 years. Why? Why are they here all that time? Why? I know the answer. They tell each other their stories. When we sit down in a room and be heard and hear others, there's a lot of power in that. Now, I'm not sure there's power in doing it over and over and over ad nauseum, but there is power in what they call fellowship. And that is exactly what I'm always talking about here in Snippet Land. That's why I created Snippet Land, because we need our own version of quote unquote fellowship. We don't call it that. But it's the idea of being heard and seen and realizing, oh my God, I'm not alone. Other women just like me are going through this. Now, your story is important. Your particular version of the truth, your particular version of a human experience is important, and it's important that you share it. Why? Because you are unique. Your story is unique, and it is your story. And when we keep our story inside and no one else hears, we keep it alive. We can't move past it. It just loops in our head. And we only get to hear our own reaction to it over and over again. So when we share our stories, that alone is enough to change the trajectory of your life. I see this happening all the time in my group coaching. We don't spend a ton of time sharing our stories over and over again, but there is opportunity to be heard. And I see this happening, and that alone, women walk away from a 10, 15 minutes in a small breakout room together feeling completely energized for the week. Because they've said, oh, here's something that happened to me this week, and someone else simply looked them in the eye and said, oh, that happened to me too. Bam! That right there changes the trajectory of your story. It's not a complicated thing. We don't need to take on months or years of sharing our story over and over and hearing other people's. We really don't. We need to be heard at least once. Somebody not only heard me, but they understood me. In fact, not only did they understand me, but they went, holy crap, that's my story too. That's the power behind this. And I believe that's what's kept AA going, and it's what is missing in most of our journeys, especially us. Here we are. We're women over 40. Many of us are professionals. We're mothers. We're grandmothers, some of us. We've got this. We have lives where it is unacceptable to have a drinking problem. That's what makes us unique. Not that it's acceptable for anyone, I guess, but it's even less acceptable for us. We're grandma, we're mom. We're not supposed to have a drinking problem, and we're professional. We're not supposed to have a drinking problem. Often we're leading others, right? I'm the college professor. I'm not supposed to have a drinking problem. And that leads to isolation that keeps us trapped for months, years, and lifetimes. Hence, snippet land. So let's talk about the difference between counseling and coaching and how you can get yourself heard to feel the power of this in your life. Here's my take on talk therapy. I think it's incredibly powerful. Obviously, it's necessary. Many of us have had talk therapy. I certainly have. We sit down, we tell our story. We know the power behind that. But I believe there's limitations to it when it comes to alcohol, depending, of course, on your therapist. I had several over the years. None of them had a problem with alcohol. Now, I guess I could have looked longer and harder to find one that did, but the ones that I saw didn't have a problem with alcohol, but they had something in common that I noticed. They were really good listeners. And that's what I did when I was with them. I talked about my past. And then I came back a week later and talked about my past again. And then I came back a week later and talked about my past again. And then I came back a week later and, oh, well, you get the point. I kept waiting for the healing to start. Felt great to be heard. I've already acknowledged we need to be heard. But isn't there more to it than that? I stopped going because I'm like, well, I've told my story. No one's told me how that's supposed to stop me from drinking my face off every day, because it never. I just go home and drink, right? So I was waiting for the healing part of this process to start. Now, I know there is healing, but I'm talking about alcohol. I'm not just talking about your ordinary quote-unquote person who's going to therapy and etc. I'm talking about going to a therapist to be cured, in quotation marks, of drinking. How does it help us to tell our story over and over and over again? It doesn't stop us from drinking, and I don't think it ever will, especially with someone who doesn't have a drinking problem. And I think this is the limitations of the route that we often take when we choose therapy. Now, granted, many of the women that I've met in my world, they have a drinking problem, but they also have other problems. So they have depression, anxiety, and the therapy can help with that. But then sometimes I wonder too, wait a minute, alcohol causes depression and anxiety. Are you sure you have depression and anxiety? Or do you just have an alcohol problem that's causing depression and anxiety? I don't know. I'm not one to try and diagnose, but have you asked yourself that question? The difference between that and coaching is, first of all, yes, you get heard, but not for long, gals, not for long. When women come into my sphere of influence, I'm happy to hear your story, but not more than once and not for very long, because it's not why we're here. Yes, I want to know enough about you that I can understand where you're coming from and understand the depth of your own personal hurt, but I'm not going to listen to your story over and over, and neither is anyone else in the room. Instead, we're going to talk about the future. We're going to heal the past. We're going to reframe it. We're going to revise it. We're going to learn how to forgive ourselves and others. So we work with the past. We don't just tell the past. And then we turn around and we build a future that we get so excited about we don't even want to drink. We heal our relationships because we understand how to stop trying to change others. And instead we change ourselves. And when we do, magically, everyone around us changes with us. It's a magical. If you want to change others, gals, change yourself and watch it happen. People just start responding differently. So this is coaching, and we just don't spend all that much time rehashing the past. This is not for everyone. I'll be honest. I've met enough women to know that some women just want to tell their story, and they want to tell it quite a lot. It's quite a lot. They want to tell it again and again, and they want people to hear it again and again, and they want to get sympathy again and again. and they want to hear the words coming out of their own mouth again and again, and they want to dwell on the hurt they've got from the past because it brings on sympathy from others. There are women out there who enjoy that, but I would argue that that is a problem in itself. So women like this, every time I meet up with them, they want to tell me their story again. And I will interrupt the narrative, if necessary, to move us forward towards where we're going. This is coaching. And it's not their fault. It's not a problem. Many of them go, oh yeah, totally, I get it. And they're happy, they're relieved to realize they've got some guidance in some direction, a direction to move, to get well, to feel better. As opposed to, well, here I go again, I'm going to tell my story again. They don't know what else to do, so they arrive and start telling their problems. And I gently, I'm very good at it, guide them in the different direction. And so they start feeling power. Instead of sitting there telling their story again, they can start brainstorming solutions. They can start visualizing the future. They can start learning about forgiveness. So if you've been trapped in this idea of telling your story and just being heard over and over, I want you to know that that's not going to help. It's not going to get you where you want to go. If you're giving up alcohol, you do need to be heard. And I said that at the beginning, and I believe we all need to be heard, not just people giving up alcohol. We're humans. We need other humans to know we exist. It's very important. But if it's all you're doing, my dears, you're not even halfway there. You're not even doing half of it. So if you've ever thought about coaching versus counseling, now you know the difference. A coach, generally speaking, looks forward, whereas a counselor looks backwards. Both serve their purpose, but it's important that you understand the difference, and I think that very few women do. Coaches look forward, counselors look backwards. I wouldn't say that's cut and dried because, as I said, we do tell our stories in coaching. We just don't spend a whole lot of time there. So there it is. If you've been wondering, what do I need? And women will say this to me. They do the sacred mirror, for example, and they say, I don't know, maybe I need a counselor. What do you think? Kind of thing. I never give advice, but this I can clarify for you. Do you want to look forward or do you want to look backwards? The answer to that question will tell you whether you want a coach or a counselor on your journey to sobriety. And gals, the Sacred Mirror is open today. I open and close the doors of the Sacred Mirror because it's time consuming, although I absolutely love it. Well, today, the doors are open. The Sacred Mirror is an online forum where you share a little bit of your story with me, and I respond by turning on my microphone and sending you back a reflection. The link is in the show notes. Thanks for popping in. Be sure to come back next time so I can keep your head on straight. Sending you buckets of love.